Well, it's that time of year again when the days get shorter and it gets colder, and that fluffy white stuff, that snow, can be a nuisance and a problem. To tell us about winter driving conditions and how the city handles that, and good advice for us to know, is David Haste, our guest today. And David, my little old driveway and my sidewalk is enough of a challenge. How do you guys in the city plan for handling winter driving conditions and that snow removal?
We learn a lot every year, every time we go out, but based on that, we'll start in about August, and we'll start reviewing routes and reviewing information and everything that we learned from the previous season, and we'll just build on that. Any adjustments that we need to make as far as routing or equipment, we'll start planning that process about that time.
Now, those crews, you guys have a lot of work to do. Is there any way that we average Joe citizens can help the city?
Mainly in a actual snow event. If they don't have to travel, please stay at home. And we know that some people just have to get out. They have to get out. They have to go to work. They have to do certain things. They have to take care of family members. We understand that. But if we're on the street and we're plowing, we're set up in a tandem formation. That's 2, 3, 4 trucks wide. If they would just simply move over to the side, and we'll work around them. But
get out of the way, in other words, is what you're saying,
yes.
And let them come around on the left.
Right. And when we're working in the residential areas, if they would maybe park their cars in the driveway instead of on the street, if they can, well,
so they don't have to go around.
Exactly. Yes.
Now let's talk about the parking. Sometimes we're told not to park on the street even when there isn't any snow. Why do we do that?
Sometimes it's real good that if we get that notice out in advance of a big event, it gives everybody time to move their vehicles off a primary route, snow route. So we'll set that up in advance. We'll communicate with the public and get that information out there that we're going to start at a certain time, and hopefully they'll have the vehicles off the street.
Now, what are the ways you communicate with the public? How do you let us know? I'm sure the broadcast media.
It's very important that we get that out, and we use a number of different sources. We have the scroll that we'll use now on different channels.
Oh, yes.
We have the radio stations that will get it out. We even have some billboard access that will get that information out. So we'll get it out any way that we can, and try and get as much coverage as we can.
Sometimes that snow just isn't pushed aside. It has to be hauled, as I remember. Where do you put that, and how do you do that when it has to be really taken somewhere?
It's a big job, and when we get a lot of snow, heavy accumulations, we'll have to load out the downtown area, and there are certain major intersections we'll have to clear out because of line of sight issues. So we have a number of lots that we haul the snow to, and just anywhere we can put it, we'll try and put it there.
Now let's suppose a worst case scenario. I left my car out. There was a really big snow, and now my car is snowed in. It's covered up with snow. What do you advise drivers to do when they're in that situation besides get their shovel out?
Now, if it's on a primary street, we'll go ahead and plow around it. Chances are that citizens will get a ticket on a primary street if they're parked there. But on a residential street, they're going to have to dig it out eventually, and hopefully we'll be back to plow that area once the vehicle is moved.
There's another thing that you do, and I know there's been some improvement and changes in how you do it. Sometimes we get icy streets. Boy, they can be worse than the snow. What do you advise us to do when we get icy conditions? And also, what are you using now on our icy streets to give us some traction and to get rid of the ice?
I would have to say, as far as operations, that ice is probably our biggest fear, because if we don't plan properly, then we can't move around the city. And so
the ice slows down the trucks.
Sure. We have to be very careful, and we have to pre-treat in advance. And what we'll do is usually a combination of rock salt and a liquid product. calcium chloride or a brine. And the reason that we wet it up is when we apply it to the pavement, a dry pavement, or pre-treat, then it'll stick to the pavement and traffic won't blow it off until the system comes in. So we'll try and get as much product as we can on a dry pavement in advance of that icing.
Before it actually goes in.
Yes, and a lot of times...
That is good planning.
Yes, a lot of times citizens will call in and say, you're salting a street that's perfectly fine.
Why are you doing that?
Right,
Yeah.
but it's very important that when we get that notice of an icing, and especially a glaze of ice, that we pre-treat the streets.
I think that's very wise. So is that little gadget on the back of the truck? Sometimes if we're behind a truck, we'll see something spinning there, and we see some material, some substance coming out.
Yes, right above that is what we call an auger box, and there's an auger inside there that'll bring all the salt, the rock salt, to the top of the spinner, and it'll drop down to the spinner. That distance where it drops, we spray a liquid calcium chloride or a brine and add it to the material before it goes out on the street.
Now, where do you store all that? You've got to have a place to go get it and keep it.
We have a number of locations. We have our main facility with the dome, the salt dome on Dries Lane.
That one we're familiar with.
Yeah,
but you've got other locations too.
Yes, we have a property down on Washington Street, the 1600 block, where we store material. Also, we have two different satellite areas, one off of Charter Oak and one off
Northwest.
of Northmore in Knoxville. It's the old IDOC facility. Based on our snowfalls in the past, we have an idea of how much material we'll need.
So you strike an average?
Yes, we do. And we never know exactly what we're going to get. And that's what's so difficult to plan for these events and for the season. It's the unknown. And we always have to plan for the worst, and that's what we do. We never want to come up short at the end of the season.
You build some fudge factor into the amounts,
Sure.
which is wise to do. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I guess I'll gas up my snowblower and get ready. Now, if people want information about the snow routes and they miss the crawl on TV, they don't hear radio, can they call someplace? Is there a website? What are other sources of information?
We have two numbers that they can call in right away, and most citizens prefer to call in. We have a number that they can call during an event and get information. That number is 494-8850. Also, we have a recorded message on the progress of our crews and what type of an event we're working. That number is 494-8830. Any one of those numbers they can call in and get information. And
that tells where the trucks are working and when the snow routes are going to be open.
What time we hopefully will have residential plowing completed, and that's really what people want to know. They want to know when their street is going to get plowed and when we should have all those plowing operations completed.
Well, we thank you for the good work and the long hours which sometimes are necessary to get it done. It's very much appreciated.
Well,
Come back and give us an update on all of this if you would, please. And we thank David very much for filling us in. But let's think spring.